The morning sun had barely climbed over the frost-kissed pines when silence was broken by a faint knock on the heavy wooden door of a lonely ranch house. Samuel Harrow, a giant of a man with weathered skin and broad shoulders hardened from years of work, had just stepped out to breathe in the cold air of dawn. The world was still, quiet enough to hear the whisper of the wind across the grass. But when he turned toward the sound, what he saw froze him. There stood a little girl, barefoot, her face streaked with dirt and her eyes wide with fear. Her tattered orange dress clung to her small frame, and her lips trembled as though the weight of the world sat upon her chest. Then she spoke words that cut through the rancher's heart like a knife. "They beat my mama," she gasped, her voice breaking. "She's dying." Before we continue, dear friends, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of good people stepping up when it matters most, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, subscribe to American Folk Tales, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Stories like this remind us that humanity still has a soul, and your support helps keep that spirit alive. Samuel stared down at the girl, his chest tightening as he tried to steady the storm of emotions rising inside him. He had lived most of his life alone, burying himself in cattle work and tending the vast fields that stretched beyond the forest. He thought he had left behind the chaos of the world. Yet now, standing at his door, was a broken child with a message that could not be ignored. The little girl's eyes, pale, desperate, pleading, were enough to shatter even the hardest heart. Without hesitation, Samuel knelt to her level, his towering frame casting a long shadow in the morning sun. He could smell the faint iron scent of blood on her torn dress, and he knew instantly this was no simple accident. Something brutal had happened. He asked no questions, for the truth was already written across her trembling lips and haunted stare. He simply scooped her into his arms and told her he would take her to her mother. The journey into the woods was frantic. The girl, who whispered her name as Clara, guided him with tiny hands pointing down winding paths and across frosty fields. Samuel's boots pounded against the frozen earth as he carried her, every step heavy with dread of what awaited. The rancher's heart, once hardened by years of solitude, now burned with a fierce determination. He would not allow this child's cries to fall on deaf ears. When they reached the edge of a clearing, Samuel saw it, an old shack, weathered and broken, leaning under the weight of years of neglect. Its door hung crooked, and smoke trickled faintly from a rusted pipe. He pushed inside, and his eyes landed on a woman sprawled across the floor. She was bruised, her face swollen, her breath shallow. Yet even in her pain, she lifted her eyes to see her daughter safe. Tears spilled freely as she whispered, almost inaudibly, "Thank you." Samuel's blood boiled. He knew immediately this was no accident of life, no misfortune of fate. This woman had been beaten by men with cruelty in their veins. His jaw clenched as Clara sobbed beside him, clutching her mother's hand with tiny fingers desperate not to let go. But Samuel was not a man to sit idle. Without wasting another breath, he gathered the woman into his strong arms and carried her back toward his ranch, Clara running close behind. The sun climbed higher now, its golden light striking across the frosted grass as though nature itself bore witness to this act of mercy. Samuel laid the woman upon his own bed, wrapped her in blankets, and began to clean her wounds. He was no doctor, but years of tending livestock and surviving harsh winters had taught him a thing or two about healing. 4 days, Samuel cared for them. Clara would sit at her mother's side, holding her hand while Samuel brought water, cooked simple meals, and tended to wounds with the gentleness of a man discovering a part of himself he had long buried. The giant rancher, feared by many for his size and rough exterior, revealed a heart capable of immeasurable compassion. Slowly, color returned to the woman's face, and her breaths grew stronger. Her name, Samuel learned, was Marin. She had endured cruelty at the hands of men who thought themselves powerful. They had come seeking what little she had, and when she resisted, they punished her. Clara had fled in desperation, praying someone, anyone, would listen. And by some twist of fate, she had found Samuel. As days turned to weeks, the ranch that once echoed with nothing but the lowing of cattle and the creak of wooden beams now filled with new sounds, Clara's laughter as she chased chickens in the yard, Marin's soft voice humming lullabies as she regained her strength, and Samuel's deep chuckle, a sound long forgotten even to himself. The ranch became more than land and labor. It became a home, bound not by blood but by the unspoken promise of care and protection. But peace never lasts without being tested. Word spread of Samuel harboring the woman and her child, and soon, the men who had hurt Marin came looking. They rode in on horses, rough and sneering, their presence a black cloud over the bright morning sky. Samuel stood in the doorway of his cabin, his massive frame blocking the view inside. Clara clung to Marin's side, their eyes wide with fear. The men demanded Samuel hand them over, mocking him for protecting a beaten woman and her brat. But Samuel's voice, deep as thunder, silenced their laughter. He told them that if they wanted to touch a hair on either of their heads, they'd have to go through him. The standoff was tense, the air so heavy it seemed even the wind dared not move. Yet when the men saw the fire in Samuel's eyes, the kind of fire that comes from a man with nothing to lose but everything worth protecting, they faltered. They may have been cruel, but they were not foolish. One by one, they turned their horses, cursing under their breath, and rode away. The land fell quiet once more, and with it came a sigh of relief that carried through the trees. In that moment, Samuel realized something. He had lived alone for so long, believing solitude was his fate. But Clara and Marin had brought light into his dark world. They had shown him that even a hardened man could become a protector, a guardian, and, perhaps, a father and partner in spirit if not by blood. What began as a desperate knock on his door had become the knock that changed his life forever. Friends, if this story has touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video, share it with those you love, and subscribe to American Folk Tales. Stories like these are more than tales, they are reminders of the strength we carry, the kindness we can give, and the change we can inspire in others. And before we end, I want to ask you something special. If you were Samuel, opening your door that morning, what would you have done? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. The sun rose higher over the ranch that day, casting long beams of light across the frost-tipped grass. Samuel stood with Clara holding one of his hands and Marin the other, their silhouettes framed against the morning glow. They had faced cruelty, they had endured suffering, but together, they had found something stronger than fear. They had found family. And that, more than anything, is what shocked everyone the most.